Hello, welcome to Central Florida Salute. I'm down on the farm in Webster, Florida, with quite a unique experience here. The air, you can smell that you're on the farm.
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah. I am with Master Sergeant, retired, Mark Leonard, United States Air Force, 22 years, right, Mark?
20 years.
20 years?
3 months.
And he is starting this organization, which we're going to talk about, the Veterans Farm. It's called the Veterans Farm and?
It's the Veterans Ranch and Rescue Center.
Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but first we're going to talk about you.
Oh boy.
Tell everybody where you're from originally.
I was, originally I was born in Toledo, Ohio, but I was raised in Tampa, Florida. My dad was an air traffic controller, and he was stationed at MacDill. And after I was born, right after I was born, he was at MacDill. So I grew up in Tampa. I call Tampa home. And then after graduating high school, I joined the Air Force, and the rest is history.
And I got the history right here. And I'll tell you, I can't remember everything, so I got to have a sheet to read here. But you enlisted in '76 with the security police, is that right?
Yes, sir. 1976, I entered. My parents divorced, and my stepdad at the time was a Tampa policeman, and I wanted to kind of follow that path. So I joined the Air Force. My girlfriend, it's a neat story. My girlfriend at the time, her dad was in the Air Force, and he said, Mark, you need to join the military, because at 18 years old, you can carry a gun. You couldn't carry a gun for the police department till you were 21 years old. So he goes, you could have 4 years of experience, carry a gun the whole time, and then get out and then go back to Tampa and become a policeman. So I went, well, shoot, that sounds like a good deal. I like to play with guns, so I was like, so it worked. It worked. I joined the Air Force, became a security policeman. My first assignment was at RAF Upper Heyford, England.
Yeah, the Royal Air Force, right?
Yes, sir. The Royal Air Force, Upper Heyford, part of USAF, U.S. Armed Forces Europe. The base I was at was a F-111 base, and it was one of ours carried nuclear weapons at the time, right there in Upper Heyford. So there was a lot of protests and demonstrations that went up the Queens Highway because of the fact that we had nuclear weapons. One of the things that I did, which was really fun, was I trained for the emergency services team. As an emergency services team member, it's kind of like being on the SWAT team. I learned how to, and I was a good shot back then. I shot in a couple competitions, but I was the sniper actually for the emergency services team. So I would go up into buildings and sit with my guns and wait for people to try to breach the area, but nobody ever did. It was fun, it was interesting, and man, the things you get to see.
Well, family show now.
Yes.
Okay. But anyway, you retrained in September of 1980 as a C-130 loadmaster. Tell us about being a loadmaster and how that happened.
Well, again, as with the stories, I was married in Moody Air Force Base, and that wasn't going well. So I sat there, and one of my additional duties was I was a customs inspector. So we had C-141 airplanes coming back from Bright Star exercise in Egypt, and they flew into Moody, and I went out and I was inspecting, watching their forms, doing the clearance for coming into country for customs. And my flight chief's brother that came in on one of the planes, he was a C-141 loadmaster. And he was telling me what a loadmaster was and what they did. They fly around the world. They hardly ever stay at home. They get to see so many things and so many people. And I thought, you know what, that's a good way to get out of Moody. So I cross-trained to be a loadmaster. I went to Shepherd Air Force Base for tech school, then to Little Rock Air Force Base for C-130 school. C-130 was the aircraft that I got assigned after basic loadmaster school. And then my first assignment after graduating that was at McChord Air Force Base in Tacoma, Washington. So while I had 4 years there. I'm very fortunate. Out of my 20 years in the military, I had 8 different assignments. So I actually literally packed up my house and moved 8 different times. And that's really unusual. You can sit there and meet some people that sat there, they came in at Charleston Air Force Base, they stayed there their whole life and they didn't get to go anywhere, except when they had TDYs. So I had 8 different assignments, and each one of them was oh man, a miracle and a story.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm looking at your bio, and I could see the places you've been. Somalia, Desert Storm. You're going to talk about all that. But first I want to, for those who don't know about a C-130, that is an amazing little airplane. Yes. Short runways, and what basically talk about the plane that you were on.
The C-130 Hercules, built back in 1956, they now go from A model all the way up to J models. J model is the super one. It's a little stretched, but it can carry 92 troops, 76 paratroopers. It can airdrop over 30,000 pounds, carries almost anything. We can put little helicopters in there and whatnot. And the most unique thing about a C-130, like you mentioned, the short takeoffs and landings, was that there is not, I don't believe, there is not an event worldwide, peace, war, humanitarian issues, that a C-130 is not part of in one way or another. Whether it's carrying diplomats, people, workers, troops. Yeah. It is just an amazing aircraft, and I flew that for 16 years, 3 months, and 15 days of my service.
Who's counting?
Who's counting? And during that time, I had over, for a C-130, it's not unique, but I had over 3,000 flying hours in the C-130, been to many events, all of them exciting, and I was so blessed with my career. God really took care of me very, very well.
You know, as I look at your bio, participated in Operation Fury in Grenada, Operation Just Cause in Panama, Restore Hope Somalia, all over airdrops, Desert Storm, what have you. Then I see one in Moscow, Russia. What is that?
Well, in the Moscow trips was not on the C-130 though. I flew in the C-141 aircraft to go to Inchevsky and Moscow, Russia. Back in 1987, the highlight of the INF treaty support with the United States and Russia, they're sending in the inspectors to watch the closing down of all the missile bases. So I did about 35 days going twice a week into Moscow and Inchevsky. And what we were doing, we were carrying in the Connex trailers and the buildings to house all the INF treaty support personnel. Mm-hmm. We had to bring in their homes and their equipment and their testing stuff. So it was quite a big ordeal. We had a Russian navigator that actually came to Rhein-Main Air Base in Germany and flew with us from Rhein-Main to Russia to make sure that we didn't deviate from any flight patterns. We had to go one route. We had to be that all the time. The cruise had to be, the planning on it was way out. We had to do, the the visas and the passports and the names. You couldn't just pop in a person because you figure it's right back in. We're talking about disarming nuclear weapons. So, so they were very strict on the people going and coming. So it was quite an interesting time. Every day when we got there, it was cold. We would land, go in and eat lunch, Russian cold soup in this little cafeteria thing. We would then go out. One of the airplanes that we brought had the K-loaders and forklift. The next plane that came in had all the equipment. So we had to download our own equipment, and then we had to download the airplane. Then we had to upload the equipment, and then we had to fly back home. And so it was a long day, but we did that, like I said, every 2 days for weeks.
Let me ask you, were you at the same plane most of the time, same actual aircraft, or you just jumped from one to another?
No, the airplanes change all based on maintenance and mission. They have a C-141 that they just schedule it. If this one's good and healthy, we'll fly that one today, and then we'll do the next one. I flew with the it was the 4th Squadron out of Ryan. They all came from the States. We had Charleston airplanes there. We had McCord airplanes there. They had C-141s at the time, and again, it's not even the same airplane, but it's always the same crews. And the crews would come up, and it was just a wonderful time. Yeah. It was so much fun.
I think we got somebody wants to say hello.
Yeah, this is Willow the Wonder Dog.
Hi, Willow. You want to be on camera? Turn around so they can see you. All right. Well, anyway, looking at your bio, Grenada, Somalia, Desert Storm, humanitarian support missions, and for Moscow, this and that. There was something else in here that I wanted to, something about delivering fruit.
The fruit. Midwinter airdrop in Antarctica back in 1984-ish, 83. I was selected very neatly to go down to Christchurch, New Zealand, and for 45 days we built the airdrop loads, high speed containers for the resupply of Antarctica, McMurdo Station during the midwinter. You can't land a plane down there, it's just too cold. But we did airdrops of equipment. Well, the year that I was there, they wanted to make it special. So the warrant officer from Fort Lee, Virginia, decided he wanted to sit there and see if we can't airdrop watermelons. So you figure we took a big high lift forklift, we stood at the top of it, and we taped it, we packaged it, and we would throw them down on the ground just to see from the floor, about 25 feet high, just throwing them onto the ground to see if they would burst. They did. They bursted all over. We ate watermelon and watermelon for days. Then
do you eat watermelon nowadays?
I do. I love watermelon. It's one of my favorite. And watermelons are good. But we finally were able to sit there and throw a package down onto the ground and then open it up and it be still a whole intact watermelon. So much so that when we did our drop, which consisted of 4 days of airdrop, McMurdo Station in the South Pole. We're flying circles around the South Pole. It's on the bottom of the world. What's neat is you open a paratroop door and you look out. You know, here in the States, you look out and where's the moon? Up in the sky. And when you're in the South Pole, you open the paratroop door and you look out, where's the moon? It's down there.
Oh, that had to be different.
I mean, because it's like below you, because you're at the bottom of the world. So it was neat. It was something that, oh wow. So we threw out our high-speed containers. We got back and there was a message that they sent in from the president through the personnel assigned to the South Pole, expressing their amazement that the fact that they got whole watermelon down on the airdrop. And they've dropped before aluminum gallons of milk and stuff like that. There's a thing they do. And they package them in with the cushioning material, honeycomb at the bottom of it, and then we tie them up, and they all go on. They were using 15-foot ring slot parachutes, and they're all ring slots, so there's holes through it, and all it did was stabilize it, because if it went down any slower, it would just freeze. I think it was like minus 70 degrees at where we were. Minus 70 degrees. And
I thought it was cold here on the farm.
You sit there and you go, to me, below 32 is cold. But this was like minus 70. It was so much. I wore the muckluck boots. They were around in your days, but they were the ones you stitched up, and they had 4 pairs of socks. I took my boots off after the airdrop. I sweated so much trying to push these loads out during the drops that I took my boots off, and my socks actually were frozen from the sweat. Take them off, you set them out, let them thaw so you can get home. But a lot of fun. Met a lot of people. We worked jointly with the Navy and the U.S. Army, and then all the teams down at the South Pole and McMurdo.
Yeah, I also see here, by the way, thanks for giving me your bios. It makes it a lot easier on me. Kuwait, you were at Kuwait also?
Yes, sir.
You were all over the place.
I was. Like I said, I was very fortunate. After Desert Storm was over, the Kuwaitis had 4 C-130s before the war. Mm-hmm. Right? Air tail numbers 321, 323, and 324. And 324. Well, the Iraqis blew up one, they stole one, and then there was 2 that were remaining. They since got the 3rd one back. The one that blew up is gone. But they used the C-130 L300, which is it's like the stretch version. It's a white, the ramp and door open. The systems work the same in the airplane, but it's more of the commercial cargo carrier, but the Kuwaitis had them. And I was actually bought as a foreign military sale to go to Kuwait and be assigned to the Kuwait Air Force, and I taught the loadmasters in Kuwait how to load and unload safely. So I was there, and I flew with them and taught them. I was fortunate at the time I was there. I actually became the president of the American Embassy Welfare Association. And I was assigned at the embassy, so I worked right for the Army Liaison Office, which was at the embassy. And we had they gave me a car, had a nice house in an apartment building looking out over the Arabian Gulf, right at the Kuwaiti Towers. It was nice, and that was accompanied. So I got to take my wife and my daughter at the time. So it was, it was right after Desert Storm.
You're not kidding. You had a very good career. But you retired in 1996, right? Is that what it is?
Yes, sir, in 1996.
And you've got the Air Force Accommodation Medal with 3 clusters, Joint Service Achievement Medal, Air Force Achievement Medal with 2 clusters, and Arctic Service Medal, Humanitarian Service Medal, Armed Forces Exploratory Medal, Kuwait Liberation Medal, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait.
And an air medal.
And then, I'm sorry, I didn't mention the air medal.
You didn't mention the air medal. That was my highest. That was unique. During Desert Storm, our crew was selected, and we performed the very first airdrop resupply of beans and bullets. So we airdropped 16 containers out to a unit out in Iraq, sitting out there, and the mission itself, again, was the first one. for Desert Storm. And so it was a lot. It was neat. I sat there and I had some pictures. I hope that you got to see them. But it was.
I have a very good partner who's filming this. She'll be putting some of that in. Relax, Mark. Don't worry about it.
I'm just saying. To try to explain, you got to sometimes see the pictures.
Yeah. Well, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Yes, sir.
But yeah, because I think we could talk all day about your service. But after you got out, you became a founding board member of the Arkansas Freedom Fund. You want to talk about what you did after you got out now?
Sure. Right when I retired, I was small life. I was working for the U.S. Marshal Service at the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Arkansas. I was a bailiff for federal court. I did that for 4.5 years while I was going to school using my GI Bill. Just using my GI Bill, I was going out, I was getting a computer education. And my shift partner's wife came up and found out that they were hiring computer programmers. So I got a job at the University of Arkansas for medical science, and I was a computer programmer there for 22 years. During that time, though, I was with the Arkansas Freedom Fund. What I had done was I went to a SWAT competition out at Camp Robinson in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, I met the people from Soldier's Ride, which was part of, or the very initial parts or phases of the Wounded Warrior Project. And at the time, there was a lone Army guy, Heath Calhoun. He had lost his legs in Iraq, and he was riding a bicycle, a hand cycle, from New York out to San Francisco. And on that trek across the United States, he was coming through Little Rock. And I sat there and just told him, I said, that is so neat. I want to be a part of that in some way. What can I do? And he told me the name of another guy, Fred Stubbe, a good friend of mine. He was the VA service officer at the VA Center in Little Rock. And they said, well, get a hold of Fred and find out, this is what we're doing, this is kind of the things we need, hotel set up and food and meals and stuff like that for the team that came through. Well, it was so successful, their part through Little Rock, they added Little Rock, actually, to part of their Soldier Ride program. So when they did their rides, they do, basically, it's like anywhere from 20 to 30 mile ride with wounded service members. They come out and they ride and they raise awareness of injuries and stuff like that. And they always had a good time. We did that in Little Rock for about 7 years. And with that, at the end of, or right at the end of the 6th year, the Wounded Warrior Project, they realized all the things that you heard and you read about in the news is all basically true, but they realized that they weren't making enough money for them coming into Little Rock. So they wanted to drop us out. They wanted us to be a grassroots organization and just continue with a ride locally and then raise money for them and send them money. Well, we started in 2009 with 12 service members on a set of bikes. We had a donor that sat there and said, I want to get you started, and donated over $10,000 to buy all of the bikes. And I told her, I was talking to her on the phone, and I told her, I said, I need 3 hand cycles, I need 2 recumbents, the 3-wheel trikes, and then I needed bicycles for the remainders. And she goes, Mark, you get what you need. I want to get you started.
Oh, that's great.
So I sat there and we bought the bikes, and then we started having a ride every September, and we just called it. Then I formed with Don Kennedy, a retired colonel, and Fred Stubbe. He was in the Marines, and myself. We founded the Arkansas Freedom Fund. We turned it into our own charity to raise money for Arkansas veterans, and we bought bicycles. We went from 12 people in our very first year. We have over, nowadays, we have passed out over 800 bicycles to veterans in the state.
Wow, that's cool.
So, and it all based on their ability. So if you come in and you go, well, I don't have a leg, well, we can adapt a bicycle for you, or no arm, or you need to lay down, or whatever. And then we have what we called then the Arkansas Challenge, which is part of what the Wounded Warrior Project challenge rides were. They were a challenge ride to get veterans to get out and go that extra mile or push themselves to see that they can do things with their injuries. And so we did that, and we have a ride there. It still goes on today. Ray Brown, a good friend of mine, she has taken over the reins of the Freedom Fund for me. I retired out of that, or moved to Florida in 2019.
Now, why did you move to Florida?
Well,
so you could meet me?
I did. They told me there was a guy in Florida that did Central Florida Salute.
Yeah, great show.
Bob Peters, and I was like, I got to meet him.
Seriously, why did you move to Florida?
Seriously, what I did was, me and my wife, I had just retired out of the University of Arkansas, and I wanted to buy a fifth wheel and travel the United States and not worry about a house. So we emptied our house, sold it, bought a fifth wheel, and we started traveling. We went and we did 3 months in Texas. We did months back in Arkansas, traveling, staying at campgrounds. Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. We were on our way to Florida because my wife sat there, and she had a sister that she hadn't seen in over 20 years that lived over in Eagle Lake, Florida. So we came down, we found a place in Frostproof. That's really the name of a town, but it does frost there on occasion, but not very often. But we were at a resort there, an RV resort, and things were going great. She was visiting her sister, we were touring, we were traveling. We ended up staying there for 3 years, just buying the same lot.
Yeah.
And then I sat there, and my wife she always wanted to own a mini farm. And the thing about her mini farm is she wanted to have a mini pig, and she wanted to name it Sassafras. So that was a dream of hers since she was a kid. So I sat there and I go, well, let's just start looking for land. And
that's an unusual dream, though.
It was.
But I know somebody else that has a pet pigs, yeah. But I'm not going to talk about them.
Well, so we came here, and when we were looking at land and the things, my mind is always going.
You know what? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to take a break right now. And then I'm going to introduce you again to my commander from my AMVETS post, Ronnie. And Ronnie wants to know about the farm, and I think he has some questions for you too. So we'll be right back. Well, Mark, I tell you, I really appreciate you and what you did in the service, and what you're going to be doing here at the ranch. And we're going to talk about that in part 2, and we're going to have another guest join us. But till then, we're going to say goodbye. And this is how we do it. And I know you can't really, can you salute with that arm?
I can do my best.
Well, I don't want you to hurt yourself.
No, I'm good. Let me go like this. Okay.
All right. Tune in next week for part 2. This is Bob Peters of Central Florida Salute. To all our veterans out there, active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.